What's up, nerds? Today I want to talk about the creation of an American port in Gaza to help relieve the humanitarian crisis that's going on in the area. So we're going to talk about not only the humanitarian crisis, but we're going to talk about what the Americans have done up to this point, and what the Americans plan to do here in the very near future. I'm recording this video on March 8th, 2024. So last night on March 7th, President Biden stood and spoke in the State of the Union speech to Congress, and he announced that the United States will be creating a temporary port in the Gaza Strip to help relieve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So this is kind of an interesting announcement, and there are some interesting little details that we'll need to unpack here. This will be designed, of course, to target the humanitarian crisis. It will link to a port in Cyprus, and that port will facilitate the movement of aid, and aid from Cyprus will move to this port in Gaza. And this really allows Israel to screen the aid at a different port. So Israel will be present at that port in Cyprus, and they will make sure that all the aid that's going in and out of Gaza will be approved by them. This will also be initially run by the United States military. However, President Biden stated that no U.S. boots will be on the ground, and so he'd like to turn this port over to commercial groups. Now, I'm not quite sure how exactly that statement of no U.S. boots will be on the ground is going to work. I mean, he's going to need the military to set this port up in the first place. And then we're going to talk about the issue of security, because this is still a war zone. I don't know how you're going to protect this port, because it's going to become a target. We'll talk about why that is here in a moment. But this all follows the recent airdrops by the United States to drop humanitarian aid, mainly food, into the Gaza Strip. And so far, what we've seen is this has been MREs. It's not been a significantly high quantity. We're talking in the tens of thousands, and really the low tens, if that. Like more around like 30,000 each airdrop, whenever the overall population of the Gaza Strip is around 2 million. So we're not really putting a significant dent here in this kind of crisis, but it's better than nothing, I would say. But the airdrops have been consisting of MREs, and this has kind of led to some amount of controversy, I guess, online. People pointing out that these MREs are expired and that they're not halal. Now, them being not expired, I'm not really worried about. I've eaten expired MREs before. In fact, I don't even know if I've had an MRE that was not expired. These things are designed to last forever. Like they sit on a shelf for years and years and years without being open, and you can open them like a decade later and they should still be fine. The worst case scenario I've ever had with an MRE is I opened one up and the pound cake was moldy, and that crushed me. But at the same time, a little bit of a different situation going on here. My experience is that expired MREs, they're still very edible and they can go well past their expiration date, but that was one concern that people have been bringing up. Now, another concern people have been bringing up is that they're not halal. The U.S. does produce halal MREs. That being said, maybe it just takes time to produce enough halal MREs to just be dropping them over a population of 2 million. And it looks like the U.S. right now is just trying to come up with something to fix the situation. So if they're throwing MREs, it's better than nothing. In either case, these airdrops are like putting a Band-Aid on a broken artery. I mean, you're not really going to be doing too much. It looks like you're doing something, but you're not. But the port opening will be closer to applying a tourniquet. The issue is there are still parties in the ground in Gaza that don't really want you to apply that tourniquet. It serves a purpose to have that level of bleeding. We've talked about in past videos about how Hamas wants there to be a humanitarian crisis because it creates propaganda value against Israel, how other groups around the Middle East, including several nation states, are also perfectly fine with there being a crisis, because it kind of snowballs this crisis on Israel and makes them to be the bad guy. Now, the IDF has not helped themselves in this situation. They've also had some pretty high-profile challenges with not only allowing aid in the first place. They had a pretty large shooting of Palestinian civilians last week in Gaza who were trying to get aid. It's been a complete disaster from the jump, and a lot of it really is IDF created. So we need to be honest with that fact. However, we also need to be real that Hamas and other groups in Israel, including several countries in the area, are also perfectly content to let this crisis play out because it serves political purposes. Now, this is all still happening in a war zone too. The fighting has still been raging on between Israel and Hamas. Hamas still has, Rafah as a last bastion, but they're still fighting in places like Khan Yunis and in Gaza City. So where this port gets set up will be incredibly interesting, and security is going to be a huge issue. Now, if the U.S. is not going to put boots on the ground, at least officially, or, they're going to transition the port from military to civilian control, then I would imagine that the IDF would eventually have to step in and provide security. I'm not sure how else you're going to provide security for this situation, because it's going to become a target. Hamas is only going to want enough aid to get to their fighters to keep them fighting. And then probably after that, not too much food. So, because again, it kind of builds that political narrative for them that the IDF is a bad guy, they're preventing aid. So disrupting the flow of aid will become an objective for them. Likewise, on Israel, they're trying to prevent this food aid from getting to Hamas. So they're going to be filtering this aid as much as they can. Of course, tensions are already high with the Palestinian people, who are incredibly desperate right now. So you're kind of creating a lot of ingredients for there to be problems. I don't see how having the IDF provide security here would be a good thing. It would probably lead to more infighting. It would probably lead to more, clashes between the IDF and the Palestinian people. And with how desperate the situation is, you can't really afford to have that happen right now. So whether a different country would volunteer to step in and provide security, or if the U.S. is eventually just going to be drawn in and have to provide its own security, we're going to have to wait and see. But all of this follows a growing rift between the United States and Israel over Israel's handling of Gaza. We've seen reports out of Washington that U.S. officials have been absolutely hammering Israeli officials over their handling of Gaza. And Israeli officials reportedly were caught off guard, which I don't know how you can be caught off guard given how bad it is, but maybe they're just tone deaf. I don't know. But the situation in Gaza has gotten so bad that the U.S. is basically clearly here deciding that they're not going to wait for Israel to do the right thing. They're just going to do this themselves. And like, as an American, I like seeing this, but at the same time, there's a lot of moving parts here. There are a lot of different risks that are involved with this kind of action. And there are a lot of different players in this region who may not necessarily be interested in seeing the U.S. do this. So this could be a really good thing. This could provide a lot of help for a lot of people who desperately need it right now. But this could also exacerbate the problem. We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, the risk does increase, at least to the United States, with introducing U.S. troops, because it's not like they're that much more popular in the region than Israeli troops. So, like, what other country can you really have that would agree to send their troops to this area right now to provide security in this kind of situation? It's a tremendous ask to ask of another country, and in the meantime, someone's probably going to have to step up to the plate. Now, the opening of the port also doesn't solve all of the humanitarian issues in Gaza. We're talking about food aid here, but there's still a health catastrophe that's going on in Gaza. A lot of disease spreading around. You have old people, you have all kinds of people with all kinds of conditions. I mean, it's 2 million people, so you name it, people probably have it on the ground. And this port may not necessarily fully facilitate the kinds of aid that would be able to remedy those situations. So maybe, in the future we see another port open up. I am doubtful, but we'll have to see kind of how this port functions once it actually becomes operational. The report that I saw showed that it should take a few weeks for the planning and the execution to happen. So maybe sometime by the end of March, early April, we see this port open. But not only will the food crisis have to be addressed, somehow the health crisis is also going to have to be addressed. And of course, we're still talking, Israel and its conflicts. Maybe a conflict opens up in the north in Lebanon, as everyone has been kind of saying that it will happen. Maybe Israel moves south into Rafah and that kicks off an issue with Egypt. How does all of this impact the port and its operations? I'd be more concerned with Egypt, certainly, because that's just not only closer, but they can cause some security problems for this port on their own. But you also have Hezbollah, and they're very capable of launching missiles this far south. They're capable of seaborne attacks. They're capable of disrupting the shipping in of supplies with anti-ship ballistic missiles. Again, there are lots of actors in this region that can make everything incredibly complicated, and you can't really risk those kinds of complications right now. So with all that being said, I want to know your thoughts on this, because I've shared a lot of my thoughts on this topic. I want you to share your thoughts, and we can discuss more down below. With all that being said, like this video if you found it helpful. Be sure to subscribe if you like videos like this, and check out my channel for other videos on other topics. We've talked a lot about Israel and Hamas and kind of the situation in the Middle East. We've also talked a lot more about the situation in Ukraine, and I plan to talk more about other conflicts as well as they develop. So subscribe if that interests you, leave a like, and I'll see you all next time.